George done enough in his overall career to be considered a Hall of Famer? We're going to discuss that and more here today on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer. I'm Kayla Santiago, sideline reporter for the Delaware Bluecoats, the 76ers NBA G League affiliate. And this episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe in addition to wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can check us out on our free daily newsletter. That's on lockedondaily.com. So some conversation keeps surrounding Paul George. Is he a Hall of Famer? Is he not a Hall of Famer? What are your thoughts overall on where Paul George stands in that conversation?
I think he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, and I understand there were some people in Philadelphia like, well, what are you talking about, bro? You see what he's doing right now. You see the struggles. You see, how he's, basically can't get past people. He can't do this. He can't do that. But we're talking about career, right? Yeah. Paul George has been in the league for what? This is his 15th season. When we look at his resume, he's a 9-time All-Star. He's a 6-time All-NBA, a 4-time All-Defensive player. He was the 2012-13 Most Improved Player, right? He was the 2018-19 Steals Champion, right? He was a member of the All-Rookie team. And we forget when he was with the Indiana Pacers, he was the face of the team that was one of the top teams in the league. And, he leaves there. He goes to OKC where, he's taking second fiddle to Westbrook. Then he goes to, the Clippers and he's second fiddle to Kawhi. But at the same time, I just think that when you look at a guy like him and you say to yourself, you know what, he's had better careers than some of the guys who made it. Now, look at Mo Cheeks. I love Mo Cheeks. Mo Cheeks is in the Hall of Fame. He is a four-time All-Star. He's a 5-time All-Defensive player. But he also had the luxury of not having to be the face of a team because he played with Dr. J. He played with Moses Malone. You know what I mean? He played with Charles Barkley. He played with all these great guys. So if you're telling me you have a guy who's a 4-time All-Star, now again, a 5-time All-Defensive player, but he was a 4-time All-Star who's in the Hall of Fame, but a guy who's a 9-time All-Star who's a 4-time All-Defensive player can't make it. I just think that's you just hating on the guy.
I think it's easy. A lot of people have recency bias too, right? A lot of people are like, oh, well, Paul George didn't do anything with the Philadelphia 76ers. He hasn't done much. But I was also the understanding, too, when the 76ers got Paul George, it wasn't going to be prime PG. Did I think he would help out more than he did? Absolutely. But at the same time, he's necessarily maybe on the kind of the back end of his career there. He's not really in the prime of his career. So I am in agreement with you that he's a Hall of Famer. Now, I think if he wins an NBA championship, you absolutely have the stamp of approval. He's in. The conversation, I think, comes when you look at championships, how much that matters to certain people. And sometimes that does play a big weight for certain people. But at the same time, I mean, you look at other guys in the league, and Paul George is one of the best two-way players in the entire game of basketball in his era, too. So I think that Paul George is a Hall of Famer. I would say definitely a Hall of Famer if he wins an NBA championship, but I do think that he has enough accolades, the way that he's been able to play in his prime, that he should be in the Hall of Fame, too. A recency bias, I think, is hurting some people, though, Keith, and I think that's where they overlook it, too, because I understand that he has been bad as of late, especially with his Philadelphia team, and he was supposed to come in and be a lot better, but you can't just look at that and forget about everything else that he's been able to do.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that. I mean, you just can't go by that. You got to go with the duration. And let's face it, prime PG was pretty good. When he was with the Indiana Pacers. And if you take was the Miami Heat away from there, they would be a dynamite team. I mean, one year he was, he averaged 21 points. He had averaged 3.5 assists, 1.9 steals. He was ninth in MVP. He was seventh in the Defensive Player Year votings. He was all NBA that year. So, he did a lot of things. It was just a matter of, basically just leaving different teams. And we have to also account for the injuries he had. The 2014-15 season, he only played in 6 games because he had suffered that injury that summer with the Olympic team. So he came back and played in the final 6 games. But then a year later, he bounced back and played in 81 games, averaged 23 points, and became an all-star, was all NBA type performer. So you got to give him credit for that. And again, 15 years in the NBA is nothing to sneeze at. And I just feel like he is a Hall of Famer.
The longevity, too, is something to look at because I think a lot of people forget an average NBA player is not going for a 15-year career either. A lot of these guys are a lot less and, especially a lot less in the amount of time that they're in the NBA that they can actually be impactful. Because at the end of the day, if Paul George comes back next year, he can still be at a point in his career where he can be an impactful player. He's not going to be the number one guy. That ship has kind of sailed for him, but he can still be a very impactful player. Do I know if it's with the Philadelphia 76ers? We haven't seen that yet. I don't know that yet. But at the same time, he can still be an impactful player, and his impact has been able to really be felt throughout the entirety of his career. And I want to, on this conversation too, Keith, there's 2 other players that I don't know why I loop them kind of into the same category. And I think that when you talk about guys being on first ballot and everything like that, they're going to be in different classes. But I also kind of group Paul George in with a conversation of like a Jimmy Butler and a James Harden and guys that I think, just because they don't have rings doesn't mean that they're not Hall of Famers. That's where I look at that from a Paul George standpoint too. It's like, yeah, he doesn't have a ring. And if he has an NBA championship, absolutely stamp of approval. But an NBA championship, to get there, that's a team sport. That's a team game. That's a team victory. You can't just have one guy take you completely to an NBA championship. And I know we've seen it done with some guys in terms of this league, but at the same time, there's other things that help you qualify, everything that you just alluded to, all those accolades that help you become that Hall of Famer. And I do agree with you that Paul George should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And the thing about Jimmy Butler, the one thing that he'll have is people will say, well, he single-handedly took 2 teams to the championship in regard, 2 Miami Heat's teams. They also look at James Harden, where he was, a scoring champion, where he also, he also was the MVP in 2018. So, he's also, what is he, top 75 player. So, yeah, he's definitely going to make it. And Jimmy Butler is going to definitely make it as well, But then we're getting back to Paul, when we talk about Mo Cheeks, and again, Mo Cheeks is a Hall of Famer. He wasn't a first ballot one, but he's a Hall of Famer. You look at Mo Cheeks. Paul George is 35, right? About to be 35. Mo Cheeks, when he finished playing, he was 36 years old, right? His final 2 seasons, he played in his next to last season, he played for the Atlanta Hawks. He played in 56 games. He averaged 19.4 minutes a game. He averaged 4.6 points. 4.6. The final season, he played for the New Jersey Nets. He played in 35 games. He averaged 14.6 minutes and 3.6 points. So when you look at it, if we talk about recency bias, there are going to be some people to say, hey, he didn't do very well towards the end, right? Now, again, he only averaged 11.1 points for his career. He averaged 6.7 assists per his career. But again, he was a great defensive player. He did a lot of things. He averaged 2.1 steals throughout his career. But at the same time, if you would have saw him at the age of 35 and 36, there were people saying, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Now, he did win the championship with the Sixers, but I do feel as though you just can't, is a career award. It's not like, okay, you just dropped off the face of the earth at the age of 34 and I think you're a bum I think this
Right.
nah. You gotta basically give this guy, you gotta talk about his whole career and especially when he was in his prime.
I think Sixers fans want to see a Hall of Fame type game or performance from Paul George if the 76ers stick with him next season. I think that's what Sixers fans are looking for going forward. But Sixers fans also not really happy with Nick Nurse, and there's been a lot of different coaching conversations around the NBA and some news coming out about different coaches for different teams. So we're going to touch on that on the other side of things right here on Locked On 76ers. Daylight savings snuck up on us, and if you're still feeling a little bit from it and you're still feeling tired or just have a very long week and a crazy busy schedule, if you're feeling the lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Basketball madness. I've been staying up late watching all the tournament action, and 5 Hour Energy helps me keep up with the next day. Extra daylight, extra activities. With longer days, I love getting outside for a hike or a run. Choco Burst is my go-to for a quick boost, on-the-go convenience. Whether I'm at the game or traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy at your local grocery store or convenience store. They're everywhere. Make sure you stock up and stay energized today. So the conversation of the coaching comes up because it was recently announced that Memphis Grizzlies fire head coach Taylor Jenkins mid-season, despite their winning record, despite what they are right now in the Western Conference. They're 44-29, 5th overall, and this is so just crazy to me, Keith. And we don't really know, what's going on over there in Memphis, but I don't know if anybody's safe now. And then eyes kind of turn to Nick Nurse as well, saying, well, how bad of a job or good of a job has he done this year? Is it time to, say goodbye to that and everything in between? I mean, NBA coaching and some of this turnover that we're seeing, and when coaches are getting fired when they're having a good season, it really kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit.
Well, I mean, basically what's going on, they're not telling you everything that happened. Like, for them, the team to be successful. I mean, and it's funny how the headlines like, oh, he got fired mid-season. They got 9 games left, right? It's like it's the end of the season. But the team is 44-29. But the problem is they lost 4 of the last 5 and 11 of the last 19, right? Since the All-Star break, right? So you look at it and you're saying to yourself, has he lost the team? What's going on? I mean, have they had a meeting with the players and the players said that? And again, I'm not saying that what happened, that's what happened. But something has to be happening behind the scenes for them to get rid of this guy, right? Now, he has had a successful tenure in Memphis, but there becomes a time where your voice gets stagnant and you need new direction, right? So I don't know what's going on, but, so I mean, I don't know, but it had to be something for them to part ways with him at this later stage. Maybe they felt like, look, bro, you ain't coming back next year, so we might as well just do it now, right? And we're going to give this other guy a chance to see, this Zach Klinman, give him a chance to see what he can do these final 9 games, if he can do something, or in the playoffs. But it doesn't make a lot of sense unless there was something brewing behind the scenes that they really just felt like that they couldn't overcome.
And it's interesting, too, because the Grizzlies are not going to come out of the West. I'd be absolutely shocked if that even happens. But the conversation, too, is saying, okay, if you're being like, oh, I don't want to bring him back next season, we know we might not make it out of the Western Conference. Now, you don't want to completely say that to yourselves, but maybe let's try to move on and see what this other guy can do and come in. And we bring this up, too, because the 76ers are now the favorite to land Taylor Jenkins. at plus 400. Keith, what are your thoughts on that? Because everybody wants to push Nick Nurse out the door. I know it's been a terrible season, don't get me wrong, but are you ready to say goodbye to Nick Nurse just yet?
Now, first of all, I will say this: like, you can't go a lot of these odds and everything is like, I don't really go by them,
right?
Because like the biggest thing is the odds are, oh, who's the favorite to win MVP? Well, we don't even know who the voters are going to be, but you got the favorite to win the MVP back in December, right? That's
True.
who you're saying. So no, like right now, if you think that this guy, Taylor Jenkins, would do a better job than Nick Nurse right now
with this team,
and I get it. And I know that people are going to say, man, there were some crazy substitutions. There were some crazy rotations, this and that. What happened to that timeout, this and that. But the reason why the team is basically struggling is because you have a lot of money vested in 3 players and 2 of them been hurt the majority of the season. Right. That's the reason why the team is struggling. So, yeah, Taylor Jenkins sounds like, he's a good coach. I give him that. But he's also like the flavor of the month right now because he's fired. But I don't think that he'll come in here and just turn it around. He'll come in here and be frustrated that, you mean you got me here and these dudes are hurt. You know what I mean? And so that's the problem. But, yeah, everybody says he's the favorite. But I do expect him. I do expect him to land somewhere quick, fast, in a hurry next season and do a heck of a job. But, yeah, these things right now, you got Nick Nurse. I think you have to give him a chance to see what he can do with a healthy Paul George, a healthy Joel Embiid, Jared McCain back in the mix, and see how this thing could work out, right? Right now, I don't think it's time to just fire him. Now, if Daryl Morey loses his job, you never know what can happen because a president of basketball ops would like to hire their own coach.
And that's the thing that we talked about, too, a few episodes ago, is just some players coming out saying that they not to trust Daryl Morey, and us talking about how it kind of starts from the top up and it's not all just Nick Nurse, and it really isn't. Now, granted, I'm not going to say that some rotations that he put out there throughout the season were my absolute favorite, or some calls that he made at the end of the game were my absolute favorite. But at the end of the day, what else are you supposed to do with the team that you currently have? I think any NBA coach is going to have an issue with what has happened and imploded the 76ers season, no matter who is at the helm as well. So I don't think you let go of Nick Nurse. We know Nick Nurse can win a championship with a superstar on his team. We've seen it with Toronto. We saw it with Kawhi Leonard. Now, granted, they had some better role pieces in there, but don't forget that if Joel Embiid's healthy, this all determines on these guys' health too, by the way. Joel Embiid's healthy. If Paul George is healthy, you bring Tyrese back, Jared McCain, and overall, possibly you have a top 5 draft pick that you can bring in that might be able to have an immediate or close to an immediate impact. That's going to be the real chance for Nick Nurse. And then maybe you can have the conversation after that if things go downhill, if everybody's healthy, of looking at other guys. But right now, that's way too early to tell, Keith. And honestly, just unfair from that standpoint, because there's been times this season where it's G League. Right now, there's G League players out there on the court, and that's who Nick Nurse is coaching to try to help win games or to try to purposely tank on the other side of things. So if I'm the Philadelphia 76ers, I think you hang tight with Nick Nurse. I know you hang tight with Nick Nurse, and I know some people won't be happy about that. But at the end of the day, I mean, this season wasn't all just Nick Nurse's fault.
Nah, it's not. You can't. We're talking about a team where your franchise player only played in 19 games.
Yeah.
19 games. Paul George missed a lot of games. Not to repeat myself, but this is what you invested in. And then you had a couple of role players who came here to be specialists, and then you asked them to be go-to guys at times. So no, you can't blame that on the coach. I mean, it's easy to, but we talk about the rotations. We talk about his always getting into it with the refs. Well, we knew that before he came here.
Right. People
commended him for his fiery attitude and giving a date, right? Before, and we remember him yelling and getting into a fussing match with Joel Embiid, right, during the playoff series. We also remember how he would come up with these crazy lineups against the Sixers, and they worked. In that playoff, the other playoff series where Kawhi hit the 4-bouncer to eliminate the Sixers in Game 7 in 2019. So, right now the difference is, you did it, but you had Kawhi Leonard, you had Danny Green, you had Marcus Gasol, you had Pascal Siakam, as the fifth option, Kyle Lowry, as the all-star version, the younger version of him. So, there's stuff like that works. Now you're trying it with, a bunch of guys who are on two ways or coming up from the G League or just role players, and it's not really working. And people are like, hey, get him out of here. But no, we commended him when he did that stuff with a star-studded roster. Well, they think they have a star-studded roster. They just think that these guys are injured. And let's see what they can do next year when they get healthy.
Only time will tell, that's for sure. And it's time for the 76ers to continue this tank race as well, as they do have a game tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. So we'll touch a little bit on the state of the Sixers. Also looking at some of those two-way players that they have, because they only have a few more games left with Philadelphia based on their contract as well. So we'll dive into that a little bit right here on Locked On 76ers. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. Picking my favorites, I got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. Staying in the action. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. Easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So make sure you visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. Go check it out today. All right, so I bring up the conversation of the G Leaguers and having that two-way, especially because we talked about this a few days ago in Jeff Downton. I'm curious, Keith, so the Blue Coats have their season finale on Saturday at 6 o'clock. The G League affiliate of the 76ers. Sixers play tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Jeff has 2 games left, to my count, with the 76ers based on that two-way contract. Do we see him just in these next 2 games? We see him in the Heat and the Raptors, and that's that? Or do you think Nick Nurse maybe tries to spread it a little bit differently and have him maybe wait to play later? Where do you kind of see the two ways affecting this? Because he's gotten some time out there on this really depleted Philadelphia 76ers roster.
You know what? I would spread it out. Basically, first of all, he's a guy from one game that I would have him play in would be when they go back to DC, right? Mm-hmm. Against Washington. And that's several games from now. That's like a couple weeks from now. I know that sounds like, why hold him out that long? But I think that, he's a guy that deserves to be able to go home and play in front of his family and friends, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like you want him to get in the game where he's really going to get a lot of run and it's going to be impactful for him. I feel like, they're talking about, which to me might be, which is crazy, but I understand it because they don't want to get investigated for tanking and all that. But a guy like Lonnie Walker is probably going to come back, right? He's probably going to play tomorrow. So whereas you got this guy, Jalen Hood Schifino, like if I'm them, I'm like, okay, Jalen has more games. Let him get some of this burn, right? But then we're going to save 2 games for Lonnie. I mean, excuse me, not Lonnie, for Jeff. Yeah, like maybe have him play that Washington game and then have him play in the season finale, right? But keep him there. But to me, I feel like it would be a little bit injustice for him to like just play these 2 games of the back-to-back and then just sitting there. I feel like that final game, let's face it, the final game, you rest anybody, you rest everyone anyway, right?
Yeah.
So have him play that one and at least let him, because I'm pretty sure mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, auntie, uncle, little Rail, all of them are going to be in DC watching them, wanting to watch him play, watching to see him play. And they don't want to see him with a hoodie on the bench. They want to see him playing. So to me, it would be those two games.
Yeah, I would like them to kind of spread it out too. I would also like to see him in the season finale for the Blue Coats as well, because it is in Wilmington. It's at the Chase Fieldhouse at home. So in terms of that, being able to just continue to play a lot and then kind of spread that out in terms of the 76ers too. I'm just so curious who we're going to see, because the state of the Sixers right now is that they're in the top 5, the NBA reverse standings, in that 5th spot at the moment. But do we continue to see Gershon Yabusele? Do we continue to see guys like that? Because, clearly if they're not hurt, you really can't sit them. But at the same time, you're trying to do everything that you need to lose these games going forward if you're the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm curious who we're going to see. I think that coming up, all these games are pretty much losses, and the one that you might have a victory in is that Wizards game on April 9th at 7 p.m. because as the Wizards schedule starts to thin out, they're going to continue to try to lose games to try to end up number 1 in these NBA reverse standings. So that's the state of the 76ers we're looking at right now. Is there anybody else, Keith, that you don't really want to see play throughout the season? Because Quentin Grimes, I think, is still going to get out there. We might see a little bit of Yabusele too. But if you could sit those two guys and guarantee some losses, hey, I'm all for it.
I mean, you're talking about players that are playing right now.
Yeah, players that are playing right now.
It's weird because, I think Yabusele is one guy that I'm looking at, and you see him, he's gutting it out, but you can tell he's battling through injuries. Yeah. I mean, it should be, I think that, he's a guy that could, sit down and rest. Quentin Grimes, and he just got here, continue to let him get his burn, get some runs. Maybe on back-to-backs, have them play the front end or the second end of a game and give them the second day off. But Yabu is the one guy. Now, again, of players who they're talking about coming back, the Sixers had practice on Friday. And to me, there was, after practice, you saw Tyrese Maxey shooting the ball. And then there was one point where he grimaced. And to me, you're looking at that and you're saying to yourself, I don't know if I would bring him back. I don't know. I understand that, he wants to come back and this and that, but I don't know if it's worth it. When you say it's all about pain tolerance at this time, well, what's the point?
Right.
You really,
why risk it? Why risk it?
Yeah. Nah, we ain't, That's when, you got to say, look, somebody has to be the adult in the room and be like, even if the league finds us, I think that the Sixers got a $200 million investment in this dude. So, regardless of what the fine is, pay it.
Yeah.
Pay it. You know what I mean? Now, who knows? They may try to take some picks from him or something like that. But at the same time, somebody has to be the adult in the room and don't even chance it. I don't care how much you want to play.
No.
I feel like it would be foolish to play him.
He also hasn't been 100% healthy this year either. If he's grabbing at something, grimacing after shooting too, why put him in to just push that to risk anything further happening? So from that standpoint, that he's coming back from an injury. And if the 76ers were competing to try to get into a play-in spot or try to get out of the play-in spot in that 6th seed, is he going to play? Probably. But at the same time, look around at all these other tanking teams that are sitting these guys out too. So it's kind of just following suit for the Philadelphia 76ers. Do not bring Tyrese Maxey back by any means. I do not need to see him in a Sixers uniform the rest of the season. Get him healthy, get him ready for next year, and bring your guys back next year as well and try to get them ready for a better run a season from now and get your draft picks. So we'll wait and see, but do not bring back Tyrese Maxey by any means. By any means. You have the money to pay the fine. Don't bring him back if you're the Philadelphia 76ers. So they are back in action on a Saturday. That's at home at the Wells Fargo Center at 7:30 p.m. against the Miami Heat. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you guys next time.